Hello, I will show you today how to bake procedural information into a texture. I show it to you with my CWI procedural material here for Blender that I've released some time ago, and I show you how to bake this procedural I information into a regular texture. All what you see here is controlled by this material here and is procedural and can always be changed. But we want look what you can do here to get this information on a regular texture. Before we start, I show you what I have prepared. First, we see this is our eye object where the material is on. Then I have created a baking target. This is a second sphere that looks into the same direction like the eye, and this sphere has some informations here, some UV informations. It's unwrapped and has some UVs on it. That's all for this object. This object with the UV information will be our target for the baking process. So we will bake later from the eye ocean here to our baking target. To bake in Blender, it's very easy. You can use here in the render tab, there is a small option here, the bake area, and there you can bake different types of textures. Sorry. Before we start to bake, we need a texture target. So we need a target on this object that have to be used for our texture information. So our object here is empty. It has only UV informations. We need first a material. This is our baking material. I have created it by clicking on the new button. Here we see this material. I put the view a bit bigger and we can see it. So this sphere here, our baking target, has now this baking material. This here is only a diffuse shader, so what you need is a texture node. To do this, or to create one, you go to the Textures tab here and create a new texture node. If you cannot do this directly, you go to the brush mask or to the brush and say New. Now you have created a new texture node. It's not a texture image, it's just a container that is empty at the moment. So texture baking. Let's say it texture node. Okay, this is our baking target. Now we need a texture. This texture represents our baking image where all the baking information will be stored. So this will be done, or can be done here in this tab below image. So here we make a new image. So Blender will create now an empty black image, black because the color here is black. And you can set now the name, so we name it baking target. And this image is called now baking target. It has a size of 1K, and you can make it bigger if you want, let's say 2K, and some more options. Set what you want here, and that's okay. Now we say okay. Now this texture node contains this image here, baking target. This image is not stored anywhere. It's just in the memory of your computer. So you have to save it to the hard disk later if you want to keep the information. So for our next steps, that's okay now. Back to our material. Our material still have no texture here on it. So what we do now is we can do it by Shift A, we add a texture, an image texture, and we add texture information, texture coordinates. For everyone who don't know how to do this, it's Shift A I'm pressing here, and I can search for nodes, or I can use the menus here. The same can be done here in the below menu where you can add some information, like textures and images and so on. Okay, back to the node tree. Now we have the texture coordinate node, the image texture, and the diffuse. This is not very important, but it's help us to see our texture in the viewport. So the texture coordinate nodes read our UV information for the image texture. Now the image texture knows where it have to be to project it. To know which image node have to be used, we go here to this menu. We could, of course, use a image to load in, but we will use the one we have created here. So I go to this image here, to this small icon, and we see the baking target node is here listed. Now we have added the baking target image to our image texture node. This one can be now connected to the color input here in the diffuse. In this way, we are now able to see what is on the texture. So I can show it to you. I switch to texture and we see nothing. It's black. So this image here is just black, but it will be the target for our baking. Well, good. That's all, and we can start directly to bake. We go now to our iOcean material and can say what we want to bake. So as you see, the shader is going now to the material output. So all color information and other stuff is now stored here in the sphere, in the iOcean sphere. Here is it. I have blended out. To bake now, we go to the render tab and we use the bake from selected to active mode. If we check this, then only a selected object information will be baked to an active object information. So this is very useful because in this case you only bake what is on our iOcean into the baking target. So what we do now is we select first the iOcean, the source, and now with Shift we select the baking target. So now you see this darker orange means this object here is the selected one, this one, and the second one, where this brighter orange one, is the active one, so this one. So this is very easy, selected to active. Okay, so now we decide which kind of information we want to bake. So in this case, we are not baking the combined version, we bake just the diffuse. I will show you an example what happens if you bake now directly. To see what we are baking, I switch here to the UV image editor and I switch to my baking target, which is black at the moment. Now we go to the baking area again and we'll start to bake. Because I have a lot of samples, it would need some time to bake, so I reduce the samples, so let's say to 50. So in the render samples, I reduce it to 50 and start to bake. Okay, let's bake. Here in the bar, you can see how the process is going. So at the moment, the scene will be prepared and my computer will start to bake the information. So it needs only some seconds and all information will be baked in. The lower the render samples value, the faster the baking is. The same is for the texture. The lower the texture, the faster the baking. About the samples, I will tell you later some important information if you are baking just color informations. So we wait now and okay, it's ready. And now you see I have baked my eye to my target. But what happened? There are a lot of circles here. The reason for this is the ray distance. At the moment, the rays who are calculating the distance between the source and the targets are set to 0. So our target would work only if it would be the same, exactly the same like our ocean model. But it's not the same. It's a bit less topologized. There are less polygons in this baking target. To avoid this or to override this, we set the ray distance a bit higher, let's say to 1. If this is not enough, you can say, set it into a higher value. And the second option is I will reduce the rays a little bit to increase the rendering time. So let's bake again. And again, the scene will be prepared. Don't forget to select the iOcean as the source and the baking target as the target. then the baking is starting, and you see it is a bit faster than before because our render samples value is a bit lower. So well, we see the result in some seconds. Here it is. Now you see, here is our eye. It looks already very nice, but the problem is you see a lot of shading informations. If you are using a real texture, you don't want this information. You want to have clean color information. To avoid all this, we need to set some more options. We switch the direct light information off and the indirect light information off too. And we get only the color information. So all the shading will be blended out and we just see the color information and not more. This is the information we need for a very good color texture. The next one will be we set the render samples to 1. We don't need any render samples if we just want to bake the color information. The color image looks very well even if you set it to the lowest value here. The advantage of this is we render very fast. So the next step when we render just the color information will be going very fast because the render samples value is low. So let's see what happens. I press on bake again and we render again, and you will see it's much faster than before. And our texture will be bacon. So here we are already finished. So you see here is the eye with nice color information. So if you are pleased, you could go now to image and save as this image, and now you can save it in your preferred format somewhere on your hard disk, and then you can use it for other programs or as a texture. This is the way how you bake color information from the procedural eye to the target. So you maybe see the people who are not familiar with Blender see there is some UV information not very well, but you can change this by clicking on the target, going into the edit mode by typing on tab, and you see my UVs are well, but you see here some margin. This is very interesting for distances in textures. So I think I don't need to explain it, but you can see all is well, all is right, just the margin is here outside of the image. So all is good. Good. This is the way how to bake color information and save this image to the hard disk. So what about normal maps and bump maps? My shader supports normal map baking too. So we go to the iOcean material here, and now we want to bake the normal map information. Normally you have to set a small render tree or a small material tree to do this, but my material has an output node here, an output slot, where you just plug the bake normal map slot here to displacement. Now you can switch this here off if you want, or leave it like it is, and now you can bake normals. To do this, you just go again. Let's see here what we will see. Now you can go again to iOcean and then shift click on baking target, and you set the mode to normals. Important for objects is you are baking tangent normals. You can bake object normals too, but we are baking tangent normals. This is a regular normal map that you know maybe from games and so on. Again, here be aware of the ray distance, or look at the ray distances have to be the right one. So okay, so what we do now is again we just click on bake and starts to bake. Now our iOcean material normal maps will be directly baked into the baking target. So we see here again, it's very fast because the samples are low, and you see here are the normal map information, and it's into the texture. So what happened now? We see some elements more. You see these artifacts or these polygons. The reason for this is very easy. We have to click on the baking target, and in the Tools tab, we set this object to smooth. Now we bake it again, and all will be baked well. The point is, normal map targets or the normal map bake the shading information of our object too. So if the object is not shaded or has hard edges, the edges information will be baked into the normal map. So you can see here, all informations are baked into the normal map. To see how this works, I go to my shader. You see there is a very strong normal map information, but if you don't want this, you can reduce this amount. So let's say you go into the node here, into my ocean, and you say the iris bump is okay, but the veins bump strength is very high. So I set it to 0.1 and try another bake. I switch back to the image and let's see what happened. I bake again. And in this version, the normal map information should be lower. So again, here the baking is starting. We wait some seconds and you see the normal map is much lower than before. So you can use my shader to increase or decrease the normal map information. Now I'll show you the last option, how to bake bump map information, black and white information into our target. Some of you may use bump map informations for other renderers like Arnold or I don't know what you have. Everything what is not cycles and you use them, for example. Yeah, of course you can use bump maps in cycles too. And let's say you don't need the normal map information, you need the bump map information. And bump maps are black and white. So what we do now is here, we go to the shader, to our iOcean, and add a diffuse material into this. Here it is. This is a diffuse shader, and we plug this shader into the surface. And then we plug off this here, the normal map, and put the bake now bump map just into the color information. Here it is. What I do here now is I collect the bump map information, the black and white information, and put it into the diffuse node to bake this information to your target. Let's see what happened now. I click on iOcean, then I click on baking target again. So we have the both here, and I say I want to bake the diffuse information now. In this mode, I am able now to bake my bump map. So I switch back to the UV image editor and let's see what will happen. Here is my map and let's start to bake. Now we should see a black and white information of our eye here. So let's wait some seconds and then we should have the information. Here we have it. So you see all the information of the veins and the iris radius. At the moment, I just support the iris radius. In one of my next updates, I plan to bake the structure here in the iris too. But at the moment, I'm just supporting this area here. So now you have not only the normal maps, you can also bake bump information into the target. So if this is too much here, or you don't want to have the iris, you go back to my material, for example. I do it for you. Here we go to the node, and we say we don't want to have any information of the iris here. So let's set it to 0. And we want to have a low value of our veins. It's too much. So let's say it's, where is it? Here. Let's say it's 0.01, very low. And now I try to bake it again, and let's see what happened. The iris here in the center should disappear, and the veins should be darker. So if you want this, you can do this, of course, again too. So let's say, or let's see, I switch back to the image view, and here it is. We don't have any iris information because I have set the value to 0, and here you see you have a very low or a lower value for the bump map. So, all right, this is for today. I wanted to show you which possibilities you have to bake procedural information into in Blender, and how to do this. And yeah, the example was here my material, and I hope you liked it, and I hope, of course, you like my CWI material. As always, you can use it or you can download it in my Gumroad shop. And Yeah, thank you very much. That's all for today. If you have questions, just drop me a line. Bye bye.